I'm here with Tony Fortune again, another identity from Reefton, and Tony's going to tell me about his trip down to the Antarctic. When did you first get interested in going way down there, Tony?
Well, I remember a lady who lived near us. Her name was Maud Charlton, and she was one of the Hintons, and she brought over a geographical magazine, and it was in 1957. I was only 5 at the time, and I remember looking at these pictures, well, the photographs of the Antarctic. It was the geophysical year of the Antarctic in 1957, and it was when the first science laboratories were established. And I used to look at these photos and look at the ice and snow and the emperor penguins and so forth, and I thought, oh, I'd love to go there. Well, over my lifetime, I've tramped mountains in New Zealand and up in the glaciers and the snow and high places and overseas, Kilimanjaro and Everest Base Camp, but I always wanted to go to the Antarctic. So about 3-4 years ago I went to South America, and we boarded a boat and we went down to the Antarctic. We went to the South Georgia Island, and we latched onto the peninsula and went in all the bays, or many bays, until we got to where the peninsula joins the main part of the continent. And we climbed up hills, and we went in those rubber dinghy boats, I've forgotten what they're called now.
Zodiac.
No, Zodiacs, yeah, and we landed on the ice shelves, the little ice shelves, and climbed up these hills as high as the lookout, as high as the translator, just ice and snow, and we'd come back down. And the captain on the boat was always looking at the radar, and several times he would call us all back because he said there's a squall coming from inland Antarctic, and they were ferocious squalls, and we just got back to the boat as the squall started, and then the next day we'd go to another bay and do the same. But we saw huge bird life, whales, we saw all sorts of different fish and birds and sea lions, and we had a fantastic time. And that was, to me, the dream come true. From that time I first looked at that magazine in 1957.
Lovely. And I bet you were into photography. You had a good camera with you, Tony?
I had a good camera, and I had a cell phone. I took a lot of photographs from a cell phone as well, and they came out really well. And I took some black and white ones and some sepia coloured ones, and they all had a character of their own. I think black and white has a certain character of its own, especially when it comes to mountains and sea and ice.
That bottom in Punta Arenas down there?
Yes, it was a Russian boat from Punta Arenas, and I've been on that Russian boat just lately. We went to, I'm due to go on another trip to the Antarctic, and that's to Scott Base and McMurdo Station and on the slopes of Mount Erebus, but due to COVID it hasn't happened, but I've still got my money in there to go hopefully next year. But we went on another trip on that same boat, the Spirit of Enderby, a Russian ship, small one, to Campbell Island, Auckland Island, and all the little islands in between, and then up to the Chathams.
Just take me to the top of Kilimanjaro.
Yeah, in 2008 I went up to Kilimanjaro, and it was a fantastic time, and every trip that I've made is so different. Some people ask me what's the best trip, but they're all so different. Well, of course, Kilimanjaro is 5,600 metres high.
Higher than Mount Cook.
Yeah, much higher than Mount Cook, and in feet it's about 19,600.
Yeah, so Cook's 12.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, we slept in the crater. We had these porters. They were Africans, and they took us up the mountain, and the guides and so forth. But one of the highlights, and it was a tough time because the higher you got, the more dehydrated you felt, the less sleep you got, your hunger, you'd feel hungry, but then you started to eat and you didn't want to.
Yes.
Yeah, and you had to force yourself to drink. I remember we slept in the crater, which was 18,500 feet, and they boiled some water for us, and water only boils at about 70 degrees up that high. And we put the water bottles down, and the next morning they were solid ice. And I calculated it was around about -15, and there was a wind blowing. And I got slight frostbite on my nose and on my hands. But we got to the top, and I went with a group from Christchurch, a lot of them were. But in one of the camps, I must tell you this story, I didn't realise at the time, but I was one of the oldest on the trip.
Well, I bet you were one of the fittest too.
Well, the guides from different companies had to put the names of all the people on a board, and our company did the same. And all the African fellas, the porters and that, they were all yahooing and looking around them. And I said to my guide, I said, "Oh, is there somebody famous up here?" And he said, "No, they're looking for the old man. There's an old man here." Well, I looked at all the notices, and it had the person, the country they're from, in their age, and I saw 40, 36, 25, 52, 50, 40, 20, and it got to about, and it had my name, and I think I was 60, I was nearly 60, about 60, I think, and I must have been the old man. And they were all looking around, looking over me to see who this old man was. And I laughed.
So you kept good pace, and you were able to keep up with the youngest and the fittest.
Oh, well, yes, yeah, very well. I've done a lot of training over the years, you know.
So base camp in Everest, my daughter flew into Kathmandu, up to Lukla, and then walked up to base
Did the
camp,
same, yeah.
Nanti Bazaar, and
Yes.
then on up there.
And up to a place called Kalapatar,
Yes.
and that's a bit higher than the base camp, and I got a spectacular photograph I took of Mount Everest, and I took it in black and white.
She done that with the Everest expedition.
Yes,
you know?
yeah, I did. It was, I think mine was similar. Yeah.
Oh, that's good, Tony. And the Northern Hemisphere in Europe, have you been into the big mountains?
I have. I've been in the mountains in Austria, Germany, Switzerland. I've been to Bhutan, gone around there. Had to get an invitation from the king to go to Bhutan. And just on that one, we were up 15,000 feet in this little village, and there was a tiny stone school there. And I told my guide that I was a teacher. So I went to the school, and there were about 9 kids there, and they were all covered in absolutely thick coats. It was freezing. And the teacher, they asked, could I teach something? So I taught them the nursery rhyme, Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star. And I wrote it on the board, on the blackboard. And I couldn't point to the very end after I wrote it, because I was saying twinkle, twinkle, little star, and the kids would repeat. And they were all smiley faces. And I saw the stick on the side, and I thought, oh, I'll get that and point. Well, the stick had a leather thing, and it was a whip.
Oh.
Well, as soon as I grabbed that, the kids all went, oh, and they folded their arms, and they looked terrified. And then I started pointing with it, and they laughed and laughed. And the guide said to me, well, you know, naughty children would have got that around their legs. And I thought, oh, that'll be the last thing I'd do. But they laughed. Yeah, and we had a great time. Then we carried on tramping.
Yes, no. It's those intimate, interpersonal things when you're travelling.
The little
things.
things. Oh yes, the little things, yeah.
Well, thank you for going over that with me, Tony. It's lovely.
Okay, thank you.